You're listening to the Spirited Entrepreneur Podcast, a show that's dedicated to cultivating intention, awareness, and flow in business and life. Join your host, Nicole Harlow, and other like-minded business owners in the Spirited Entrepreneur community over at www.thesepodreview.com.
Hi, you're listening to the Spirited Entrepreneur Podcast. This is your host, Nicole Harlow. And today's episode is an audio accompaniment to an article which originally appeared on medium.com. It's actually part 2 of the story of how I went from living in my van to setting up a life on the Mediterranean island of Malta. If you missed part 1, you can go back to the podcast episode right before this one and listen to that first part of the story. It's called The Dizzying Vertigo of Endless Possibility. Whatever you can do, or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. It's early November, and we've just driven over an hour from our mountain perch to Reno, Nevada, simply to get a shower. The past few weeks have been a dizzying haze of sleeping in Walmart parking lots and casinos, plus an overnight stay around the back of a used tire shop, a happily accepted invitation from a proprietor after we had gotten a flat. A claustrophobia of both corporeal and ethereal dimensions descended, and then a tipping point. We're turning back around and ending this. At that point, it was unclear whether the relationship would outlive the journey or the other way around. One last fill of the gas tank, 6 hours of highway, and we were back in Portland where we started. I was on familiar yet uncomfortable ground. There's a place that's known only by those brave enough to make bold choices, but maybe it's not even right to call it a place. It's more of the absence of a place, a holding pattern, a purgatory, where all and nothing feel possible at the same time, where the possibility of choice is endless yet empty. A vast swath of space stretching out in what the philosopher Kierkegaard called the dizzying effect of freedom, of paralyzing possibility, of the boundlessness of one's own existence, a kind of existential paradox of choice. See, in my darker, dizzying moments, I often long for the ease of the conventional life, the false comfort that comes from the familiar daily commute, the favorite show on Thursday night, and the convenience that comes from the lack of choice. Yet there is a point in life when you're asked to become the steward of your own life, to boldly take responsibility for actively creating your path, laying the winding path brick by brick, felling trees, and hacking your way through thick bush. Really, to stretch the metaphor even further. The moment you say yes to a life of deliberate creation, moving backwards to a place of unknowing, unaware convention is no longer an option. Life required a bold choice from us in order to keep the pulsing balance of homeostasis. And so it goes that we made the decision to sell the van and use the money to fly to Berlin to open a new chapter. The route to Berlin came with a shockingly unintended rerouting. I was refused entry at the UK border on my brief stopover en route to Berlin and sent right back to New York. Exhausted but determined, I got back on a plane to Europe, this time managing to successfully touch down in Berlin. January and February slithered past, while I spent my time in what could only be called deep recuperation. But what I didn't realize was that another pivot point was steadily lumbering towards us.
I want to get you. I want to get you.
It's the beginning of March. We're about to sign a lease on a new place in Berlin tomorrow, And with a belly full of wine, I say something in passing that once uttered changes the course of events and can't be undone. I wish we were moving somewhere else tomorrow. I was half hoping my love would laugh it off in a sensible way, as if to say, "You're ridiculous, that's impossible." But he agrees, and once again the vertigo of choice ripples up from my toes, vibrating every nerve. The gut instinct has spoken, but the analytical mind needs more convincing. With less than 24 hours to decide on a new course, we pull out a big sheet of paper and open up Google Maps. We list out potential places we'd love to live in Europe and rate their pros and cons. By the end of the night, the last name left on the scratched up list is Malta, a country we've never been to and that I couldn't even place on a map. Only 3 days later, we landed in Malta, feeling a bit spun out and experiencing pangs of doubt about our decision. Deepak Chopra says, if you obsess over whether you're making the right decision, you're basically assuming that the universe will reward you for one thing and punish you for another. The universe has no fixed agenda. Once you make any decision, it works around that decision. There is no right or wrong, only a series of possibilities that shift with each thought, feeling, and action that you experience. After a few weeks in Malta, the layers of doubt were replaced fiber by fiber with a deep feeling of pleasure and fulfillment. Our world is reconstructing around us, and I feel appreciative of my current state of calm domesticity, mixed with the exotic rush of living in a foreign country. Over this last year, especially recently, I've learned how to allow myself to rely deeply on my intuition and honor the gut feelings that arose when I sensed that I wasn't in a place or a state of being that supported the best expression of myself, relationship, and work. Whenever I let go of my perception of life as a straight line and allow myself to stop resisting the eddies and bubbling currents of this great flow of life, I am rewarded. Whenever I let go of my need to control every circumstance in my life, I am rewarded. Whenever I let go of the perfectionism that has me worrying about looking like an inconsistent flake because I changed my mind, I am rewarded. Whenever I choose to step into the dizzying vertigo of endless possibility and commit to making a bold choice, I am rewarded.
You say I'm so hard to wait until I know what I take off your dress.
Well, we've come to the end of today's episode, and I really hope that you enjoyed the story. Don't forget that there is a thriving digital community aspect of this podcast. It's a place for you to meet other spirited entrepreneurs, get inspired, share your business, or even find an accountability partner. You'll find your invitation as well as other details about the show on thesepodreview.com. Also, I'd love for you to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. And once you've left a review, if you like, take a screenshot of it and email the screenshot to thesepodreview@gmail.com. And you'll be automatically entered into a monthly contest to win a Spirited Entrepreneur gift pack. Pretty cool, right? You can find any additional instructions about how to subscribe and leave a review, plus things like show notes for today's show, how to submit a question, recommend a guest, or contact me at thesepod.com. And you can also find me on Twitter at HeyNicoleHarlow. Now, the Spirited Entrepreneur podcast is sponsored by the folks over at Audible. They have been really generous and have offered an audiobook of your choice completely free to all listeners of the show. One book that I think ties in really perfectly to the core theme of the article that I read out is the book, The Untethered Soul, The Journey Beyond Yourself. It was written by Michael A. Singer. To download your free copy of The Untethered Soul today, go to audibletrial.com/spirited. Again, that's audibletrial.com/spirited. And download The Untethered Soul, or you can take your pick from the 180,000 other titles available. This is Nicole Harlow, and until next time, have a great day.